It feels like just the other day that Milwaukee Bucks toppled CP3 and company to win their first NBA championship in over 50 years. But believe it or not, the 2022 season is already knocking at the door and starting back up. With injuries and familiar faces on new teams though, it feels like this season could end up being a roller coaster ride from start to finish. That's why today we're taking a look at what experts expect will happen this season. Let's go. Steph Curry wins his third MVP. Last year, Steph was a better supporting cast away from winning his third MVP award, and did it without Klay Thompson for the whole season. If the Warriors had a better record last season, Steph would have probably been a shoo-in for the award, since individually he had an even more dominant season than when he was the first and only unanimous MVP a few years back. Now with Klay on the mend, Otto Porter Jr. filling that third long-range shooter role, and a lot of young talent around him, it feels like this is Steph's award to lose. The Warriors are in a pretty decent spot too, since if the young talent doesn't pan out, they can always make a trade to bolster the roster this season. Kyrie Irving plays more than half the season. The Kyrie Irving news had kind of enveloped the league before the starter pistol fired to start the campaign. And the weirdest thing is that we still don't really know where we stand with Kyrie and his status for the season. As of now, we know that Kyrie won't get vaccinated and thus won't play or really have even practice in New York, since that state has a vaccine mandate in place. I'm a huge Kyrie fan, and have been for years. Sorry, Boston fans. But if the Nets aren't handing James Harden an extension just yet, it's fair to think that Kyrie might be out with Brooklyn. The Athletic's Zach Harper thinks that this whole issue will be resolved sooner than later, and that Kyrie's relationship with KD should help mend any tension in the locker room. This is the most likely outcome, but everyone doesn't agree that the Nets will be able to ride this one out. Ben Simmons gets traded to Brooklyn for Kyrie. ESPN recently made this bold prediction, and although I love a gutsy take, this one feels a little out of the realm of possibilities. Kyrie would immediately make Philly better, and he would gel well with Joel Embiid, especially off the pick and roll or pick and pop. But what about Brooklyn? Can they handle Ben Simmons' flaws? Maybe. The floor spacing in Brooklyn is fantastic, and the team doesn't really rely on a post scorer. Besides, maybe when Blake Griffin checks in. The problem here is that Ben Simmons isn't really a threat off ball, and if the Nets want to offload Kyrie and his contract, why would they pick up another huge one with Simmons? This whole trade seems a little too good to be true in that both teams solved their troublemaker situation, and the Nets have, at least not openly, been shopping Kyrie. Should he become available though, watch out for some interesting decisions. Dame doesn't finish the season with the Blazers. Now this is a bold prediction, but also one made time and time again by experts across the league. Dame was not happy last year, and his team quality has been on a steady decline since LaMarcus Aldridge left for San Antonio. The McCollum-Dame combo has not elevated the team into a contender, and Portland's front office has been forced to sit on their hands due to injuries ravaging the roster the last 3 seasons. If the Blazers start out the gates slow, which they very well could based on their current roster, expect some noise out of Rip City. Lillard seemed really upset when the free agency period came and went, and the Blazers made few moves to improve their roster. Dame is a true superstar, and his trade value will be through the roof if he becomes available. Who are experts picking to win the Lillard race though? Philly gets Dame. Have you been noticing a trend so far? The situation in Philly has been covered on the channel time and time again, and not for good reason. Things are ugly there, with Ben throwing in the towel on the team that drafted him, and Philly reporters, Eagle players, and more have piled on the former All-Star for his lack of improvement. That same lack of development at the NBA level is the only reason that he is still there in the first place, and the Sixers have patiently waited for the season to start in hopes that a team will get desperate enough to make a move. That team could very well be Portland, who will be at the mercy of their star, and should he choose to demand a trade. Dame to Philly is a perfect combo, and the Blazers get a solid floor-raising player as they shift into the next chapter of their franchise. Could be more likelier than we think right now. The Bulls make the playoffs. The Chicago Bulls have been a bottom-dwelling team for quite some time now, and have essentially wasted Zach LaVine, as they made bad decision after bad decision. New management has brought in some new players that could boost the team into the playoff tourney, with Lonzo Ball joining from New Orleans and DeMar DeRozan signing from San Antonio. Both players will be looking for a fresh start, and both players will have a massive chip on their shoulders after being discarded from their former teams. The Lakers and the Raptors a handful of seasons ago. Floor spacing could be an issue, but if this team can play good defense and get out into the open floor and on the fast break, they could be just solid enough to overcome some of the weaker Eastern Conference teams and find their way into the playoffs after a drought. Phoenix takes a step back. Zach Harper of The Athletic mentioned that although he thinks that the Suns should once again challenge for a title, things may be shakier than we initially realize. Even though the Suns brought back most of their team and are without any major injuries, the problem is Chris Paul, and that historically the guy has struggled past his first season. Remember how poorly things ended in LA and Houston? Paul is an elite competitor and also a very detail-oriented guy who isn't afraid to speak his mind. This can sometimes rub players the wrong way, and when the honeymoon phase wraps up, the team's play begins to dip. Now this is more of a hunch than anything, and the Suns players seems far more close-knit than the Rockets and Clippers units, but it could be something to be on the lookout for this season, especially as more eyes will be on the Western Conference champs. Giannis takes a huge step forward and backwards. It's hard to imagine that Giannis still has plenty of room to grow as a player, and after watching some of the preseason games, it's evident that he didn't rest on his laurels after finally breaking through his postseason issues and winning a title for Milwaukee. Giannis looks like he's developed his jumper quite a bit, and it looks far more reliable and natural than seasons past, where it looked like a basketball robot chucking the ball at times. Giannis shouldn't become a splash bro. However, as last season we saw major development for Giannis after he hurt his leg and lost some mobility, the guy is a great big man. Giannis, if he chooses to play like Shaq and less like a wing, could make himself even more dangerous and reliable in the half-court offense. We may not see this version of Giannis until the postseason, but look out for an even more physical Giannis when the chips are down and the Bucks need a bucket. The Heat become even meaner on defense. PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry are joining a Heat team, already led by one of the grittiest guys in the league in Jimmy Butler. Pair those three with Bam Adebayo on defense, and you have probably the top-ranked defense in the league, as well as one of the most physical. The Heat this year will be one of those teams that nobody wants to play against, after slipping below their standards last season due to some injuries and unfortunate circumstances. The four defensive stalwarts should also help implement Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro into the game on offense while easily hiding them on defense, something they did to great effect in the bubble 2 seasons ago. If former star Victor Oladipo can bounce back and finally avoid the injury issues that have halted his career so far, the Heat can easily put out a 5-man rotation that has no weaknesses on defense and some effective slashing and playmaking on offense. And that is all for today's video. What are you hoping to see this season? Are there any storylines that I didn't mention here that you are excited to watch shake out? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more videos like this.